And everybody's just y'all were just dragging. Y'all were like, oh. Well, good evening. We're happy that you're here. Hey, I got some great news for you, okay? There's no notes for you to take. I filled in all the blanks for you.
That's
so
awesome. What a gift.
There's a lot of content, and I kind of really wanted us to just kind of focus on what we're going to talk about. So sometimes people want to make sure that what'd you say to her? She just got up and left.
Oh. This is why they're here. Okay.
It's because you missed last week, isn't it?
Woo, yeah. Catch up.
And so we have a lot of stuff that we want to share with you, and we're going to kind of go back and forth.
Yep. This is part 3 of the marriage series, Worth Fighting For, and we truly believe it is worth fighting for. And for those of you that don't know us, we are Jason and Judy Henderson. Do you want to tell the story this time?
No, you go
I
ahead.
introduced this the last 2 times.
It's okay. You're good at it.
Okay. All right. So we met in college and started dating our sophomore year. We dated for 3 years.
Yeah, after you dated your loser and boyfriend, and then you got right with Jesus, and you found me. It was awesome.
I don't.
You remember that part?
No. I've never had any other boyfriends. We're good.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
No, I don't remember
I thought
anybody.
he was your boyfriend. Maybe some homeless dude. Okay, so so we met in college, met in Springfield, Missouri.
Yep, we did. So we dated for 3 years, and we decided we're going to set ourselves up to win for marriage, and we're going to go to the best of the best. We went to the dean of the psychology department and made an appointment with him, and we sat with him for an hour, and he said, all right, you guys have good heads on your shoulders. You're good to go. Then the pastor that married us. Actually,
we walked out of that meeting, we looked at each other and we're like, that's it?
We were like, that's it? Okay, so, and the pastor that married us, he didn't do premarital counseling with us.
No.
So we got married, which was amazing. Like, we're in love. It's awesome. Everything's wonderful. But the first weekend, we realized, I think we had our first discussion is the word. And we realized we needed help. That we needed help. And that if we didn't get help, we weren't going to make it. And so we decided that we were going to become students of marriage if no one else was going to help us. And so we read every book that we could get our hands on. And here we are, 27 years later, going strong. And God has been so, so good. Yeah,
it's been a great journey. So what we're going to share with you is this. Things that we have learned along the way. We're not experts by any stretch of the imagination. We're just students like you. Yeah. And we've always just wanted to have a healthy and strong marriage. And we wanted our home to be a place, where our kids can grow up and see what a family unit is supposed to look like. And so we just have really strived very hard to maintain that.
Exactly. And, every marriage has seasons, and we're in a new season now.
Are we?
Well, yes.
What season are we in now?
Our daughter got engaged this week, so that's awesome. Yes.
What did she say? Davis, what did she say? She said, did my dad really say yes? Did he really sign off on this thing?
Yeah.
So here's what we want to do. We want to teach the next 2 weeks on basically building strong relationships so that we can get adultery and keep adultery out of our relationship.
So how to divorce-proof your marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
So on the top of your page it says 1/3 of 1/2 of all marriages are affected by adultery in some form or another. God has created us to have a desire to bond with a person of the opposite sex, and any violation of this causes, and that word is what? Jealousy.
Jealousy.
Right? And so a lot of people say jealousy is good, jealousy is bad. Here's what you got to know about jealousy. God created us to have, jealousy is an important emotion in marriage. It can be destructive, but it is essential in marriage, meaning that there's a balance with jealousy. Exodus 34:14 says, "For you shall not worship no other gods, for the Lord whose name is jealous, and he is a jealous God." So remember I talked about this morning how God made us in his image. Well, if God is jealous, then that means we also have that from the Lord. So there is a way for us to use it in a sinful way and also a healthy way.
Right.
And like anger. And then I have this, in marriage, it means that you will not give up easily. God is tolerant of rivalry. God is intolerant of rivalry. He will not walk away from us at the drop of a hat, so he's going to put up a fight for us. So when you get jealous of your spouse getting attention from some other person, you know, that somebody ought to slap that thing, you know, that's a good thing to feel that, but it's a bad thing to act on that.
Right, yes.
Right?
But it can be very motivating.
Yeah. So when you leave your father and mother and you join in marriage to your spouse, you are reprioritizing your relationships. And this is something that I've had people argue with me on. So I'm going to give them to you, and people are like, I don't believe that. And just let me just say all of it first, and then you can agree or disagree. Your marriage relationship is before your children. Your children. Here's the plan. Your children grow up in your house, they leave your house. You are happy in your house. Children come back to your house, you change the locks on your house. Right? And I've had people, okay, so my grandmother used to say this, my mother's mother, and she would say, husbands come and go, but your children are there forever. Spoken from a woman who's been married 5 times. Okay? Yeah. So in her mind, it was always the children. But really, if she would have reprioritized, you know, her spouses, she may have been able to be married a little bit longer to some of them. So your marriage comes before your children. Your marriage comes before your work. Your marriage is basically comes before any recreation or hobbies. Believe it or not, your marriage comes before your church and your ministry. But your marriage does not come before your relationship with the Lord. So if, for instance, if you're busy at the church and your marriage is suffering, we will tell you stop doing ministry and go minister to your family. Because if you don't have a home and a family and a marriage, then everything is a loss. So you really need to make sure that you keep all those in proper perspective and priority.
Absolutely. And it's a constant reprioritizing too, because life gets busy and it gets crazy, and you have to constantly make it a priority.
Absolutely. So jealousy protects the relational appropriateness of the relationship. So if your spouse says to you, well, I'm jealous of that person, you should probably be aware that there's a reason for it. There's a reason why your spouse feels that against somebody, or, I mean, look, I gotta be honest with you. Women have this incredible superpower that they can, like, read people, and some of them are really good and some are better than others, but you have that ability to, like, be able to talk to a person and you can read them almost immediately, and then you say to me,
don't give my secrets away.
well, I'm just going to tell this. You have to.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's your, what do you call that? Like, you call that your what?
Discernment.
Is that what you call that?
Yeah.
I call it superpower.
Okay.
But you just, I mean, I'm oblivious to stuff, but she can just pick up on anything. Like, there's something going on over there. I'm like, Judy, why? My spider senses are tingling. Right? And you sense that. And that's pretty impressive. So, understanding adultery. This is going to be kind of crazy. So why don't you go ahead and you start with that one.
Okay, so adultery, I believe we're all familiar with the term, but just in case there's someone here who isn't, it's taking the most sacred expression of intimacy in marriage and giving it to someone else who is not your spouse. Adultery doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen by spontaneous combustion. There are warning lights. There are signals. There are flashing lights that go off, red flags, you name it, whatever you want to call it. It's always preceded by a loss of priority. We just talked about that. Heart connection or integrity. And why in the world is adultery becoming such an epidemic in our society. It's rampant, which is shocking to me because COVID, everyone's supposed to stay 6 feet apart. And we've seen, this is terrible, we've seen more adultery during COVID than I think ever before.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff that's been going on.
Yes. So why is adultery becoming such an epidemic in our society? It's glamorized in our Western society. Movie stars, celebrities, entertainers, influencers, you name it. Like
pastors.
Yeah.
Big name pastors,
yeah,
celebrity
absolutely.
pastors. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess making it newsworthy, there's money to be made off of that, and somehow you have to keep your name in the headlines. So, there's a lot happening. I don't think I really need to say much more about that, but we touched on it briefly last week, where we talked about having an ungodly support of friends or family, and how adultery tends to run in groups because you gravitate towards people that you have a lot in common with. So if you're a partier, you're going to be friends with people who are partiers. If you are someone who's intimately seeking a relationship with God, you're going to become friends with people who are intimately seeking God. If you are making family a priority, you're going to seek connection with people who have strong family units. I mean, that's just the nature of who we are as humans. And so 1 Corinthians 15:33 says this. It says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals." You want to take this next one?
Well, personal cell phones, texting, social networking, they say half of all affairs are started online today.
Mm-hmm. There are apps where your texts disappear, Snapchat, you name it. There's a lot that people can do to hide what it is.
So I'm going to tell you what we do.
Okay.
We're not going to tell you what you should do, but we're just going to tell you what works for us. She has access to everything that I own. She has all of my logins. She has my password for literally everything. So at any time she ever wants to go on my phone, she ever wants to go on my computer, she can absolutely do that. There's nothing stopping her from doing that. We've decided that if we're going to really guard ourselves, and we have to trust each other, and we have to give each other access into those things. Mm-hmm. She hasn't given me access to hers. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So I have access to hers. I don't always remember her code, so it's like, hey, what's your code? Hey, can I see your face? Okay, unlocked. All right. So, but that's something that we have always done. And what's funny is, it's not really funny, but we also tell our children the same thing. Listen, hey, if I buy your phone, I want access to your phone. I want to know who you're texting, what you're texting. Okay, I'm going to tell you, my daughter's here, but I'm gonna confess something. So we were at a church one time where part of the deal was they paid for our cell phone. So, and our kids were young, so when I gave them the cell phone, like in middle school, I said to them, I just want you to know, the entire church can read all your text messages. The entire church can see all of your pictures. So you need to be careful what you write and what you take a picture of. And they were like, okay. And it was beautiful. It worked flawlessly. And the other thing we taught our kids really early on was, no matter what you do on your phone or on the internet, it is always there forever.
The internet is forever, and that includes your cell phone because others have access to it. It's going to be on a server somewhere, and Snapchat may tell you that it disappears, but I guarantee you it's on a server somewhere. And regardless of what app or whatever pictures you send, and even if you tell them to delete it, generally speaking, it doesn't get deleted.
No.
It's there forever.
So just be careful, teach your kids these things, and I promise you're actually putting really good character traits in them.
Yeah, that's a whole nother lesson.
Yeah. So why is this message so important? Here it is. Adultery destroys lives, marriages and families, but it doesn't have to, because God can still heal it, and you can avoid it. Let me just say this to you, and I don't know who's watching or who's here, But a lot of times we have people in our church that maybe have gone through something like that, an adulterous affair, and they've been able to get through it and fight through it. So God has an incredible way of healing and bringing that process. So, but how does that happen? Like, how do people get through that?
Absolutely. Adultery doesn't have to be the end of your marriage.
No, it doesn't.
And God can get the victory even when painful things happen, as long as two people, and it takes two, are committed to the Lord and to each other. You can fight through it, and you can have a great marriage on the other side.
Yeah. So here I have 6 steps to healing. The first one is true repentance to God, your spouse, and to all the people that are affected. God forgives. There is no blaming or justifying what you have done, and so you just have to take responsibility for it. Number 2 is you got to have honesty and responsibility with what you have done. Number 3, you got to have forgiveness. Women are more prone to forgive the husband than the husband to forgive the wife. Listen, I have sat in many rooms with many men, and they have confessed to me stuff that they've done, and I've been said in response, well, if your wife did that, how would you handle it? Oh, she's gone. But you would kick her out, but yet you want her to forgive you for, yeah. You see a problem with that? Well, yeah, I know it's not right, but it's just how I feel. Like, well, that's probably why we're here in the first place, because your emotions are manipulating you.
Right.
And so women have this forgiving spirit more so than the men, and it's just what we've seen. Not always, not 100%, but it does happen. So then you need accountability. All adultery takes place in an atmosphere of deception. So you need to learn to be accountable to each other. You need to earn trust back. And then you need to build strong marital foundation. Now, let me say this to you. We operate in such a way, I have never cheated on my wife, okay? But we operate in such a way, in a sense, that I know that if you put me in a situation, I'm going to sin. Well, how can you say that? Because I'm a person. And if you catch me at a weak moment in my life and you put me in a bad situation, I will probably choose to sin every time. Well, you're the pastor. You're supposed to be stronger. No, I'm human. If I think that I'm better than something that I'm not, then that's how the enemy gets a foothold. So we operate in such a way that we're always trying to guard and check those doors and making sure that we're not giving the devil a foothold in any part of our lives.
Absolutely. We are fully aware that we have a target on our back. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so we have those safeguards in place.
Even to the point where we've been on Facebook since, long story short. So I have a friend of mine in Australia. He's crazy. He's out there. He's an inventor. He called me up years ago and goes, hey, mate, you got to join Facebook. And I was like, I'm on MySpace. No. You got to get on Facebook. Get on it before it hits 1 million, trust me. So we were on Facebook before Facebook even hit 1 million people. And when we did it, we sat there, and when we had our login, I said, Judy, I don't want to be on this by myself. So we were always Jason, Judy, Henderson. That's always been our Facebook account. And so we've always done things like that together. And so it's just important that you have that mindset that I don't want to allow the enemy to come in and get a foothold.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I did start my own later, but that was because I had to
because
do
you're
it for
prettier.
my job.
Yeah, because you're prettier.
No,
Yeah.
then that's not why.
Yeah. You're prettier than me, Judy. Okay, so all right, so here's what we're gonna do today. There's 4 areas of your life that we have to build around: emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. Today, we're only gonna deal with emotional and mental, right?
And then next week we'll do the physical and we'll do the spiritual.
Yes. So how do we build a strong emotional foundation? Since you know so much about emotions,
I am an emotional person.
and since I am mental, that's the areas that I feel like we should address.
Deal.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So building a strong emotional foundation, it's important that you make a covenant to never turn your heart away from your spouse. And when we get married, we take vows. And these are sacred vows that we make before God and witnesses. And that is a covenant. You're making a covenant with one another. And I think a lot of times we forget that. We get so caught up in the day and the decorations and the dress. But this is an important thing that God takes very, very seriously. It's a covenant. Hebrews 13, verses 4 through 5 says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled."
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last. What was that last one you just?
So just so you're aware, this is his favorite verse in the Bible.
It's amazing.
"And
verse.
let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have, for he has said, 'I will never leave you nor forsake you.'" And do you care to expand on
I
that?
just like
or
that
you
part where it says the marriage bed is undefiled. That's a pretty cool verse. I got to be honest with you. I mean, listen, everybody thinks like God is so like anti-sex. God doesn't, no, he says the marriage bed is undefiled. You know what that means? That means when you have a husband and wife who are intimate in their marriage bed, there's nothing you can do that is going to be dishonoring to the Lord. I mean, okay, so we were in college one time. And we went to this college group. We were going to this church. And this is how the college professor or whatever, director at church, this is how he got all the college students to come to his church. You ready? He goes, "I'm going to do a series on sex." Yeah, I'm there. So we went. And so we went and we heard it, and the first words out of his mouth was, he goes, "Sex is an act of worship to the Lord." And I went, hallelujah. Finally, somebody's going to preach the truth. But that's what that verse, in a sense, means. It means that, you're, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, when you have intimate relationships with your spouse in the marriage bed, it is an act of worship. Think about that.
Mm-hmm. And that's inside marriage, not outside marriage. Okay.
Correct. That's why it says marriage, not
Exactly.
somebody else's marriage bed,
Right.
your
Yes.
marriage bed.
Yes, your spouse, not
Yeah.
someone else's.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So number one, God promises that he will never turn his heart away from you. Deuteronomy 5, verse 21 says, "And you shall not covet your neighbor's wife." If we're to be Christ-like and he never turns his heart away from us, we are to do the same for our spouse. So we are to be content with the spouse that you have. Once upon a time, you were in love with your spouse, and you loved that person enough to marry them and to stand before God and witnesses and take these sacred vows, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, till death do us part.
Sickness and health.
All that, yes. So be content with the spouse that you have. If you are currently not content, backtrack and figure out, where did it start going wrong? And, because it takes two people to grow apart, the same way that it takes two people to grow back together.
All right, let me give it to you this way. So there's a really good book, if you want to read it. It's called His Needs and Her Needs. And it's written by a guy whose last name is Harley, like Harley Davidson. So Harley is the author. There's actually two of them, and their last names are the same. So he tells a story in the book where he's this family counselor. And so he has all these couples that come to him, and they're like, our marriage is a wreck, and all these things are so bad, and we just need help. And so he goes, "Okay, I'm going to help you." And so he sits down, and they talk about their feelings. And they share all their heart stuff. And so he gives them little things to do, and they go off on their merry way, and he goes, and basically 90% of all those people get divorced. I wasn't able to save anybody. So then he started thinking, what can I change, or what am I not seeing that can really help people, last in their marriage and their relationship? And the way he describes it is everybody has basically a love account. I think he calls it a love bank, but a love account. And so when you're, dating, you're always continually making deposits into that account, right? You're buying flowers for no reason. You're going on dates. You're doing, everything that your spouse, or your girlfriend or your boyfriend enjoy doing, you do it. So you're making deposits left and right. Then you get married, and then, maybe something doesn't go right, and you make a couple of withdrawals. The people that are going through either adultery or they're going through on the verge of divorce is that they are bankrupt. Literally emotional bankrupt. And he's had to teach them for you to, you need to now start making deposits into your spouse's love bank so that you can build that up. Well, I've tried to talk to them, but they won't talk to me. Okay, well, keep making deposits because you're really overdrawn. And so he kind of gives, remember that?
Oh,
and
yeah.
we were like, that makes so much sense. Okay, that's why when you first get married, everything is great, and all of a sudden, he leaves his underwear on the floor, and you're like, that silly boy. And you go and you pick up that underwear and you put it in the hamster.
In the
hamper. And then all of a sudden, a couple years later, you guys are just, you're at work and everybody's tired. And the same underwear's in the same spot on the same floor. And you're like, really? That's because there's no deposits on the other end. So when that person sees that, they have nothing to give. There's no grace or love to give. And it's not a Christian book that actually I just referred you to, but it's a really, really great book on how to get back the love and the affection and the respect that couples need to have to be able to be successful in their marriage.
Absolutely. It's Building an Affair-Proof Marriage is the
that's
subtitle.
actually the subtitle for it.
And we cannot keep a copy in our house, so we don't have a copy to show you.
Yeah.
But it's literally something that we have passed along to so many people. We don't really do marriage counseling, but we're more than happy to give you all of the resources that we have that have helped us and that have helped couples along the way. There are couples that do need counseling, and so we do have biblical counselors that we're affiliated with that we're happy to refer you on, but we're not counselors. We're just giving you experience and tools that we've learned along the way. That's our little disclaimer right there.
Well, I'll tell you another reason why we don't really do deep counseling is because this is the honest truth. Everybody we've ever helped counsel, they've left the church. Every single one. There's not been one that says, I've got to be in this church because you just helped my marriage and you are absolutely phenomenal. No. They have poured their entire hearts out, open to us, filleted their lives before us. And then after we finish and they're done, they're like, I just can't do it anymore. I just feel like you know too much about me. So we have decided that we would much rather be people's friend and pastor versus their counselor. Yeah. So that's a really big reason why we have moved away from that, because we would rather keep the relationship than try to be the hero, if that makes sense.
Yeah, people get embarrassed, and it's okay. Like we'll be more than happy to sit and talk with you and share tips and tools, which is what we're doing right now. But ultimately, the responsibility is on you and your spouse to do this together. But that's a tremendous book. It's absolutely amazing. So God promises that he will never leave us or turn his heart away from us. Deuteronomy 5:21. And you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, which is what you just talked about. So learn to be content with your spouse. Our God has a covenant relationship with us. And we have a covenant relationship with our spouse. We have been all given God millions of reasons to leave us, but he doesn't. Our God is always all in. Better for worse, that's disappointment and offense. Richer for poor, that's stress and distraction. And obviously sickness and health. Absolutely. And in order to have a successful marriage, you have to be all in. It's 100%, not 50-50, 100-100. Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on to emotional affairs. And I want to read this portion to you. It's by a psychiatrist. Her name is Gail Saltz. And it says, many people convince themselves that as long as there is no sex, it is not an affair. But it is. An affair really has to do with secrecy, deception of the partner, and betrayal. It also has to do with the amount of emotional energy that you put into the other person and are no longer giving to your partner, your spouse. Most people are more disturbed by the breaking of trust than by the sex. It is what's most difficult to recover from when a person has an affair. Those involved in an emotional affair are often in denial. They don't think they are having an affair at all. The denial keeps them guilt-free, and they feel they don't have to give it up. They tell themselves it is just friendship. So, and this is a very, very delicate line that people are going to try to push in your life, and they're going to try to push the boundaries. They'll get very, very creative. I had a businessman one time say, "What, your husband isn't secure enough that you can't have friendships with other men?" It's just that slick, and it's it's
We killed him.
difficult. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was said to you.
It was said to me, and I was like, "Oh no, my husband's secure. I can have friends with other men."
Yeah.
And then I realized, no, I can't. Like, the enemy is just that subtle. So for the friendships that we have are with other couples, and I have friendships with ladies. You have friendships with men. That you have some close friendships with women, but we're just
my mom.
But we're friends as couples.
Yeah.
Before you are a friend with the female, or I'm the friend with the male.
Correct.
It's just you have to put safeguards in. You have to put boundaries. And the enemy is slick. He is so slick. He's a slithering snake, and he'll slide right in there before you even know it. And you might be in denial, but it's a real thing.
So, Judy, how do you know when you're having an emotional affair?
So this is how you know when you're having an emotional affair.
Tell us, Judy.
So when most meetings and conversations are kept secret from your spouse. And texting is super easy that way. It just is. But if you're not sharing it with your spouse, you're headed down a slippery slope. Number 2 is when you say and do things with someone you would never do in front of your spouse. We have had conversations with people who have had affair, or who their spouse has had an affair, and they've said things like, "I wish my spouse would have told me that this is what they wanted, or this is what they desired. I would have been more than happy to." But yet they chose to do it with someone else. And it's very common because, again, you have to talk about your feelings, and we talked about that. You have to have communication, and you have to really communicate your needs with your spouse.
Okay, hold on a minute.
Yes. Oh boy, you scared me.
All right, so trying to put this as delicately as possible. So usually what has happened for us is when we would talk to a couple that maybe they something like this would happen. Let's say the husband has a sexual affair, and the wife says to us, and she say, "Well, I didn't know that he liked that, or he wanted that, or he desired that," and that she actually said, "Well, if I would have known that, then I would be more than happy to help my husband in that area." Whereas the husband said, "Well, I didn't know we even cared about all that stuff," whatever that stuff was. But my point is this: is that's why communication with your spouse is so important, because whatever desires that I have to share them with her. And if I don't share them with her, I promise you that Satan is more than happy to bring somebody else into my life that will say something like, "Well, you know what? I can treat you better than your wife. Mm-hmm. I care about what you want. Tell me what you want. I'll make it happen." And it's just very, very, it's right? It's crazy.
And that's the lie, you know? And that's why, back to part 1, where we talked about date night and why it's important to have conversation, and why it's important to spend time with your spouse, and why it's important to create a safe place where you can share your emotions, and where you can share your desires and your dreams, and because we're all human, and we all have needs, and we all have things that we would like to do, and and the sad thing is, it's also romanticized by society, movies, whatever, but you can have those beautiful things with your spouse.
Yeah.
You just have to talk about it, and you have to share it with each other. But the flip side of that is your spouse has to make it a safe place so that you are able to share that.
Okay, all right, I like where you're going. Okay, so tell them what a safe space is.
Okay, so we have this rule. So I think, yes, we told you guys about how we do date night. And we started this early on. Even when the kids were little, we would put them to bed early, and we would have a date. And we didn't have a lot of money at the time, so it ended up being on the back porch.
All the time.
Yes. So now we have this rule, and it's what happens on the back porch stays on the back porch. So even if there's,
It's Vegas, baby.
It is Vegas. So, even if there's a difficult conversation or whatever, it stays on the back porch. And that, that is a safe place for us to share whatever needs to be shared.
So I don't go and share with my friends about what we talked about last night. She doesn't go, hey, we're having girls' night. Girl, let me tell you what we talked about last night.
Tell you.
No, that never happens. That never is a conversation with anybody. That conversation is only here. It's not anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to tell you, as a fella, if you want your wife to be more open and transparent for you and with you, you're going to have to create that safe space. And you're going to have to prove to her that you can be trusted with, I'm going to say it this way, but you know what I'm saying, your secrets. The things that you share intimately with your spouse, that's between you two. And it has to remain between the two. It never becomes a part of anybody else's conversation. It always becomes just things that you guys talk about.
Yeah, because when you violate that trust, you really only hurt yourself.
Exactly.
Because trust is earned, and it can easily be destroyed.
Yeah.
But once trust is built, you can build on that foundation, which is awesome. All right.
Point 3 is when you point to arrange a private talk or time with somebody else that's other than your spouse.
Yeah.
And then 4 is when you share things with them that you would never share with your spouse. So obviously you want to open the door for an adulterous emotional relationship, then you begin to allow other people into a part of your life that they should not be a part of.
Exactly. It's very easy to do. You have to always guard your heart, not from your spouse, but from others, so that the enemy can't get a foothold. Because windows are opened to the other person, and when we open windows to other people, walls are built with our spouse.
Oh, that's good. That's tweetable right there.
That is.
So how can you stop emotional affairs? The first one is this: stop flirting. There's a difference between being nice and being flirtatious. Being nice is just, hey, I'm being nice. Being flirtatious is like, I got other things I want. So you got to make sure that you know the difference. Stay out of high-risk places. I always tell a person who struggles with alcohol, don't go back to a bar. You know what I'm saying? If you struggle with certain areas, keep your behind out of those places that will attack you. And so you got to put guardrails up and know that you got to stay out of those places. If there is a relationship that you have that is very flirtatious, that is very inappropriate, stop it. Just don't go there. Back off the relationship. If you see yourself going down a road that you shouldn't be going down, then put your car in reverse and go. Just go.
Yeah, the kids have a great term. It's called ghost them.
Ghost them.
Yes.
What is ghosting?
You break off the relationship.
Oh,
you don't respond. They're going to try to text you, call you, come by. Just break it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Y'all, Merry Christmas. You learn ghosting. All right. Turn your heart back to your spouse. You're going to have to, in your mind, do that.
As intentional as you were when you were dating, that's how intentional you have to be to woo your spouse once again. You have to court your spouse. Woo.
Wow. What is wooing?
I think of like a knight in shining armor. Bless you.
I think of a barbecue joint where you can go eat. What else do you think of, Louie?
A princess in a castle. And
Yeah.
the knight in shining armor
I think of a
rides
football
on his
stadium.
white horse.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else you got?
It looks different for everyone.
It's a chariot. It's a truck. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, you got to turn your
Yes.
heart back. All right, so you the next
Okay,
one.
so how does the relationship go from emotional to physical? Something makes you lean away from your marriage. Whatever it may be. A lady told me one time, because I said, everybody talks about this whole, leaving the underwear on the floor, leaving the socks on the floor. What am I supposed to do with that? Like, what is your advice when it comes to that? She goes, honey, if that's a problem, she goes, there's more than enough women in the world that are more than happy to pick up his socks. So you pick what battles you want to fight. And I thought to myself, okay, that's really awesome. Like, it's an honor to pick up my spouse's socks. Not that you would ever do that, ever, but it was like a hypothetical situation.
Fellas, I'll give you that seminar next week on how
Yes.
that happens. But
Okay.
But
Yes.
Okay. All right.
In all fairness,
But
because we all have weird, quirky habits. Okay, I mean,
yeah. What do you have, Jude?
you don't, but I know I do.
Really?
Yeah, I
No, you named a couple that I had. What was the ones you said that I had?
I couldn't think of any. Not a single one.
I'm weird.
Well, I married you because I like your weirdness. I like your quirkiness. But if you make withdrawals from the love bank, the weird and the quirkiness that you loved when you were making deposits, when you're making withdrawals, that's where the enemy gets a foothold, and that's where people get annoyed with their spouse, and that's
It's
where
when
they get
like
upset.
the sticky socks stick to the carpet and it's hard to pull up.
when you stand them up in the corner because they're like gross. Yeah. Okay. So there is an awness of another person. So when does the relationship go from emotional to physical? You are in awe of a person who is not your spouse.
Okay, so for instance, if we're having a conversation and her entire conversation is about somebody else, like a male, then there's an issue. Like, okay, I can handle a couple stories, but we've sat here this entire time and you won't shut up about this person. Flags are going to go up in my head.
Yeah, even
right?
if you don't recognize it yourself, your spouse more than likely is recognizing it. Innocent meetings with that person open the door for flirting. You want to talk about that?
No, not really.
Okay. So we have a rule, and it's that we don't ride in the car with another person, even if it's an innocent meeting. Business meetings, whatever. Even when I was in the corporate world, I had the rule I would not ride to lunch if we had a lunch meeting with another male. And I had male coworkers get upset with me, but that was the rule that we established.
And it wasn't something we didn't trust him. We just didn't want to put ourselves in that situation. When I was a youth pastor, when I was a youth pastor, we had kids we had to take home. I might have, a guy and 3 girls or whatever. All the girls would be taken home first, and the guy was always last, no matter where he lived or anything. I was never going to put myself in a situation where I was alone with a young lady in my youth group, and even now as a woman in our church.
Yeah. And you may have good intentions, but the other person may not. And that brings us to number 4, when meetings become intentional and planned by one of the people. This is how a relationship goes from emotional to physical, where they're on purpose planning meetings so that they'll run into this person.
Yeah.
You can recognize the red flags while in a group setting. The 2 people linger together in a conversation. And that's when the conversation begins to shift to feelings. And then number 7 is the 2 people then gravitate and they have isolated meetings and they disguise them with legitimate purposes. So, late business meetings, late night working at the office. And there are times where you have to do that for your job. But when, for example, when I had to do that, you knew what I was doing, who I was with. I would check in regularly text you, hey, this is what we're doing, keep you updated so that you're fully accountable and fully transparent with your spouse. All right?
Absolutely. We were on number 8? No, number 9.
Yeah, the isolated meetings.
Okay.
Number
9.
Wait, we skipped
number 8. When two people have isolated meetings for pleasure.
So this is where it easily, you go from those late night office meetings to where then all of a sudden it moves to the next level.
Drinks.
Let's go have some drinks. And
hey,
then,
are you hungry? Did
yeah.
you have dinner? I haven't had dinner.
Mm-hmm. And then it moves from one thing to the other. So the number 8, the two people have isolated meetings for pleasure. And then number 9, embrace becomes affectionate.
Come on, just give me a hug.
And playful touching begins. Come on, playful touching begins, and then the embraces become passionate. And that's when adultery happens. And once adultery happens, generally speaking, you think you may have done it in secret, but it always comes out.
Always happens
Always.
in the public, right?
Yes.
Always comes
Yep.
out.
The Bible says,
Yep.
yeah. Proverbs 10, verse 9, whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. Elsewhere it says, whatever you do in secret will be shouted from the rooftops. So whatever you're doing in secret, if you're not comfortable with it being shouted from the rooftops,
don't do it.
I suggest don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the application point here, and I think you get the point, is don't turn your heart away from your spouse.
Okay. So number 2, building a strong mental foundation. So that was emotional, so this is mental. Be sensitive to your spouse's emotional needs. In other words, use your head to understand where your spouse is at. For men, in no particular order, these are the things that we have to have in our life. We have to be honored, we have to have sex, we have to have friendship, and we have to have a domestic support.
Refer to part 1 if you missed it. Women have to have security, open and honest communication, leadership, and affection, a.k.a. we discussed.
It says non-sexual touches, but I have no idea what that means. But evidently it's a thing for women.
But you're learning, and
am I okay with it?
You're good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
High five?
High five, yes.
Non-sexual,
you're doing good.
right there.
Right, yes,
Okay.
non-sexual touches.
Proud
right
of you.
here. Yes.
Proud of you. All right.
Okay, so men who are selfish, maybe you should read that.
Go ahead.
Okay, men who are selfish, self-serving, and self-centered create a marriage that is insecure.
Oh my gosh, that is so true.
If you are a male and you are self-centered, you are self-serving and selfish, your wife is going to be insecure.
And not only that, your relationship is insecure.
Your relationship is going to be insecure.
We talked about it this week. People do what?
Project.
They project.
Yeah.
So if you have a husband that all he says is, "Are you cheating on me? I saw the way you looked at him." Mm-hmm. Chances are, 9 times out of 10, he is doing the same thing. He's just projecting that on you.
He's being shady.
He's being, Slim Shady. Mm-hmm. There it is.
Yep. So it opens the door for affairs. Okay.
Stop that behavior.
Just stop it.
Just stop it.
Yeah.
I want to read this one. Okay. Women who are selfish, ladies, self-serving and self-centered create a marriage that is offensive and damaging to men's honor.
Mm-hmm. We talked about that.
They beat their man down. They talk bad about them. They just slam them. My husband's lazy. My husband's this. I wish he would do this. I wish he would do that.
But he wasn't that way when you married him. So without being offensive when I say this, something happened to beat him down. Chances are, if he's beat down and henpecked, you may or may not have had something to do with that.
Yeah.
Okay, you probably had something to do with it. I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah.
But it's important that we and again we talked about that in 1 and 2 is that we have love and we have respect, and that's the flip side of blame and control. Yeah. Because that's what henpecking is.
So husbands should never be insecure in a relationship because they're creating security, and women should never beat down their husbands because their husbands are loving them and encouraging them. It's just, you got to be careful on how you treat each other.
Exactly. The love and respect, if you're honoring your husband in your marriage, he's not going to go outside looking for it, and he's not going to feel the need to exert some kind of dominance or whatever because his needs are being fulfilled within the home.
Yes.
All right, application point, and this is how you do that, is having a servant spirit is the secret to a fulfilled marriage. When Jesus came to earth, as a leader, he served, and he showed us, like, he washed the disciples' feet. And as Christians, we are to serve one another in the same way that Christ did. And when you have a servant spirit toward each other, doesn't mean you're a doormat. It doesn't mean, that one person exerts more dominance, but when there's a mutual submission to the Lord, you can have a very fulfilled marriage because you're serving one another, and what that means is you're meeting one another's needs.
Yeah. It's so funny, when we first get married, we just fight over just the dumbest things. And you realize later on in marriage that the things that we fight over they're just frivolous. There's no point to it. Mm-hmm. And we just have decided that we're going to focus on what makes us better and makes us stronger. Mm-hmm. I mean, she joked about, listen, there's a lot of issues that I have. There's a lot of issues that she has. And yet, the beauty of it is that we've been married for 27 years. We know that. And maybe it's nothing now, but we had to learn each other, and we had to figure out, what is it that makes you, there's things that you have to have.
Absolutely. And we're all fallen. We all come from families that are fallen, that there's sin, there's dysfunction. Like, we're the human race, and we're not going to be made perfect until God makes us perfect.
Yeah.
But it's tough, and you have to fight through it, and you have to hash through it, but you have to determine, am I going to fight for this? Am I going to fight through this? Because chances are, no matter how hopeless it looks, if you fight through it, there's something absolutely amazing on the other side.
Yeah.
And God allows us to walk through situations so that we can be stronger. And the enemy wants us to fail because he wants to destroy the family. He wants to destroy our marriage. But yet we have to continually remind ourselves what marriage is a picture of. And we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
So I think one of the secrets that we had mentally as well as emotionally is this. We looked at each other and we made a pact. And we said to each other, it's us against the world. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if there's every woman in the world hates me. I don't care. As long as she loves me, y'all can kiss my grits. Right? Who cares what other women think? If she's happy with me, then I'm good. And I think that's the mentality that all men have to have. As long as my wife is happy with me and we are good, I don't care about anybody else. I don't mean that in a bad, in a mean, nasty way. I just mean like this is who I please. And it's us. It's Jason and Judy. We're united. We're together. We have a united front. We're always going to be that way. And I think that's what makes all of marriages so great, is when you have a couple that's going to stand there and say, we're not perfect. We have our faults, but we're united and we're committed to each other. And I'm telling you, when you do that, you become a power couple. Like, you become a force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. Satan, he is going to attack you, but I'm telling you, when you're united, think about it. If Adam and Eve were just united, Satan couldn't have did what he did. But they weren't necessarily united, and so when they were attacked by Satan, hey, do this, and then whatever, they fell. Yeah. But what we've learned is we have to work at being united, and we have to work at just, it's us, it's the Hendersons.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, the enemy is going to take just the smallest thing and try to blow it up and make it big. And we're both very driven people. We're both extremely passionate.
Yeah.
We've had some knock-down, drag-out fights as a result. But when you boil it down, you understand, okay, our priority is we want to remain married. Divorce was never an option.
It's not in our vocabulary.
Murder maybe, but
Murder is.
but divorce never.
Pain.
So, yes, pain, agony, yeah. But if divorce is not an option, then you're going to work it out.
Yeah.
And for us, I think the big lesson for me, being married to a pastor, is the majority of our attacks happen on a Saturday night. And it'll be the smallest thing that'll just set me off. And it's unnecessary.
It's so weird you say that.
I know, it's so weird. But I had to learn early on that it's not you. It's not me. It's Satan trying to get a foothold in, because if he can disrupt the worship that's supposed to happen and the word that's supposed to be given on Sunday morning, then he doesn't have just us. Like, he's affecting more relationships. So, like, we tell ourselves Saturday night, do not engage, do not engage, do not engage. Like, I'm sorry.
Danger, Will Robinson. Yes. Danger, Will Robinson. But it's so true.
But it's so true.
Listen, I have the greatest argument known to man, and I'm getting ready just to nail her to the wall with how wrong she is. And I hear, don't engage, don't engage, don't engage. You know, but that's we trust me, if you go through your life and your life patterns, and you figure out, you know, what sets us off or what makes us argue, I promise you there's a pattern. I promise you there's a day. I promise you there's a time of day. I promise you there's a time maybe right before the bills need to be paid or whatever stress you go through or school or whatever. There's going to be there's a pattern in which the enemy attacks you. He doesn't attack you just randomly. Listen to me. Doesn't attack you randomly. He always attacks you at your weakest moment. And he watches you and he studies you. We know it's Saturday night. We know it. And matter of fact, we have been laying in bed on a Saturday night, and all of our pots and pans have fallen out of our shelves for no reason. When we had a phone in our house, we would get random phone calls on Saturday night at 3 o'clock in the morning all the time. So he's always going to try to disrupt us. Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that you ignore issues, but if it's still an issue on Monday, then address it. Chances are, you probably don't even remember.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and we're not saying go to bed angry.
No.
We're just saying, listen, we can table this discussion, and we can both agree to table this discussion and not hold offense to each other so that we can talk about it because we know we're being attacked. So that's not going to bed angry. That's just recognizing what the enemy's doing.
Exactly. You're not angry. You're just not engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a difference there.
There's a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't wait for next week. Next week we're going to talk about, what are we talking about? We're talking about the physical and the spiritual affairs.
And then what about, and then after that, you said you had some things.
Oh, so then, oh my goodness, this is going to be fun. So if you have questions that you would like to submit anonymously, there's a box in the back, and it has index cards, and we will answer them the last and final session. We're also going to play the newlywed game, which may or may not be dangerous, but
it will be entertaining.
Well, we're not going to play it. We're going to ask some of you guys to play it.
Hosting it.
We'll host it. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Because we want you to get to know each other a little bit better, and we want you to recognize that none of us are perfect, and we all have fun, and we have quirky little things, and we can laugh about them and have a good time. But I know that there are some very serious, issues, as they pertain to adultery or whatever they are. If you are not comfortable asking them in person, write it on an index card and put it in the back. I've already had some people text me and say, I have a question, can you please submit this anonymously? And we're more than happy to answer those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, can we pray with you? And then we'll close. Father, we love you. We thank you so much for the time that you've given us to be here at this incredible house. Lord, we pray for our marriages that are represented, our families, our children, our grandchildren. And God, we ask that you would just continue to work in a mighty way in our church. And Father, you know that we don't have all the answers, and And there's so many things that we need to personally work on, but you're such a gracious and patient God with us, and we just thank you for allowing us to have this time. So we love you, we praise you, we thank you. We ask that you take care of our kids this week at camp as they take off tomorrow. Give them a safe journey there and a safe journey back. We ask that if there's any kid there that doesn't know you as their Lord and Savior, Lord, that you would speak to their hearts and that you would just begin to impress upon them your love for them. We love you so much, and we thank you, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I will answer one question people said, are we invited to the wedding? And the answer is yes. Everybody in this church is invited to our wedding. And you say, well, how can you do that?
Our wedding?
Our kids' wedding.
Oh, okay.
Right? Isn't that right? You better say yeah. So everybody is invited, and we're going to have a celebration because we love marriage.
We love marriage, and we're big fans.
Yeah. So I will tell you this. So when Davis asked me, after he gave me 5 shots of whiskey, I didn't know. He said, drink this.
I was out of town.
Yeah.
He held you hostage for hours.
Yeah, he did.
So,
he did.
Like, yeah.
He said, hey, drink this. It'll help you. And no, I'm just kidding. And he goes, I'd like to, ask for Juliet's hand. And I said 2 things. Then I will say yes. The first one, I said, I expect my children and my grandchildren to be raised in church. That's just the way it is. We've spent our entire lives, focused on the Lord, and we want our family to continue that. And I said, I also request a short engagement. I do not believe in long engagements, so they're getting married tomorrow. I'm just kidding. So that was my answer. But we love Davis. We think he's a great fit for our family. We think he's a great fit. I'm still waiting for his dad to give me a goat and 3 chickens, but we're really excited about it, and we.
Sorry, I do apologize.
You cut me off?
No, I was trying to get ready. I was like,
do you like Davis?
I really like Davis. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've never hung out with the mother of the bride. It's kind of a new thing for me. I feel kind of, I don't know. It's like, wow, you're a mother, the mother of the bride, to be.
Yes, I am.
Are you okay with that?
I think it's fabulous.
All right.
Yes.
It's exciting.
Anyway, we're gonna stop while we're ahead. If you found this helpful, this series, share it with a friend because I know a lot of people would love.
Yeah,
some
YouTube's
help.
the best place to find it.
Yes. Can I play the music now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Feel free to sing along.
Love you guys. Thank you for coming. All right.